Welcome, everybody, to New England Prevails. This is episode 4. My co-host, Jake, is a little busy with work at the moment, so I am single hosting, I think. I guess I'm going solo for a little bit for now. And lucky for us, I have one of my dear, dear friends, Kate, who is with us. She is also from New England, so she's ranked very highly up there. I would only trust her with this first guest cast. She is from Massachusetts, one of my good friends from the George Washington University. Kate, say hello to everybody.
Hi, everybody. Glad to be here.
Woo! Kate, tell the folks a little bit about yourself, kind of what you do and what you're into.
All right. I am from Tewksbury, Massachusetts.
Oh,
Tewks. And when I started college, I would say, I'm from Tewksbury, and everyone thought I was from Duxbury, which I think is a much, much nicer town. At the very least, it's South Shore on the water. And Tewksbury is North Shore, Billerica, Lowell, Andover, New Hampshire, adjacent. Lowell,
Mass?
Lowell, Mass.
Like,
the Mills.
Where the fighter.
In the fighter, yes.
Right.
We went to the set.
Oh, did you really?
Yeah, it's the main downtown, but they deserted it, so then it looked like it was this deserted crappy thing, but it's the main street.
Like a crack den.
Yeah, but it was the main street, so it was good.
Fun. Wow.
Yeah.
And your father was a cop?
Yes, in Malden, Massachusetts, just retired after 35 years since the 80s, so that's pretty cool. My mom was a nurse at the Beth Israel Deaconess for most of her life, and they were both Boston people, Stoneham and Melrose. And all my family, big family.
How many generations back in Massachusetts does that go?
I guess great-grandparents.
Oh, wow.
I just don't know past that. Because there was a whole family kerfuffle because we had some brownstone in the South End that's recently sold for $1.2 million. And it's where my grandmother grew up, but it was a shitty neighborhood. And we're oh my God, why did we give up on that? Generations ago they sold that house, but...
See, old money. It never dies.
That's what you have to do is live in a slum or whatever and then just wait.
Yeah. Well, so it was just a brownstone in a little neighborhood. Do they have acreage attached? Any?
I don't think so.
No land?
No land.
It's good to have land.
It's good to own land.
Well, it is interesting because a lot of people, I grew up in a small town, but you don't have vast tracts of land. So you really have to make do with the dwelling that you have, and there's only so much you can improve a home on. But I guess in New England we've been doing it for centuries, making them look pretty inside and out for the folks. Now, are your parents still staying in the same house? I know sometimes, when the kids are all out,
right,
they try to, downsize or whatever. Is that
No, we're on the same house in Tewksbury. We live on an acre. Mm-hmm. Everyone in our lot, everyone in the neighborhood is an acre, so I guess it's like a backyard-ish.
Mm-hmm.
But,
any cattle, any livestock?
No. But there's, deer and stuff sometimes, and they used to find, Civil War bullets. Civil War? It must be.
Civil War?
I don't know. War bullets. musket balls. Maybe it's older.
Could have been revolutionary.
But my mom brought them to, a museum, and they're yeah, everybody finds those in their backyard. We don't care. We don't want them. So they're in our house, in a little, we have a whole, display thing. So we have some, maybe it can't be the Civil War. I think
It's got to be older, right? It's got that's classic New England right there. There's probably arrowheads and musket shells in your backyard.
Yeah, and they're just we don't need these. I don't care. But they're heavy, and we used to always play with them as kids because they're little round bullets, but they're balls, and they're heavy lead. Yeah, super, super heavy. I had lead poisoning as a kid. I don't know if that's related. That was the 90s, early 90s. They weren't cribs shouldn't have lead in them. So it was that they just didn't know.
There was still lead in cribs.
Yeah.
It's true. Yes. Well, because the focus was still on asbestos and all that bullshit. But yeah, I guess lead poisoning, I don't know. I didn't know anyone that had lead poisoning. Everyone said it was a scary ordeal growing up. I was my older brother, he was scared of pencils because they used to be made of lead. Clearly we're already made of graphite, but he had this phobia of when kids would
stab
put
each other.
pencils, right? As kids do, as young boys do, of him getting cancer from these lead pencils. First of all, they're made of graphite, but I was it's a weird fear. I've never known anyone that's had lead poisoning in my lifetime.
Well, I don't know. My mom is kind of a hypochondriac, so she could be lying and be you had lead poisoning as a kid, because I think that you have severe developmental delays and stuff. And so I don't know if she's just like meant like there was lead in the crib and you chewed on the crib, so you have lead poisoning. Like that could easily be that. But speaking of old New England diseases,
yes,
or whatever, illnesses, I did have scarlet fever.
Stop it.
I had scarlet fever when I was 4, 1994. Which, like, nobody gets anymore.
There was a guy in that show, Glee, who couldn't hear out of his ear because he had scarlet fever.
You watched that show for way more seasons than anybody else in America.
I was a child for way too long. It was a problem.
But yeah, so scarlet fever is when you have strep throat, and your parents say, you're fine, and don't take you to the doctor. And strep throat just develops into a more severe illness when your parents...
Lord.
And it ended up with... I think this is the same time because I was sick a lot. Like in Vermont at Smuggler's Notch skiing, we're big skiers, with me like burning up and them like putting me in ice baths in the hotel bath because they did not want to cancel their skiing vacation and they didn't think I had anything wrong with me. I was just whining about my throat, and turned out scarlet fever.
The cold climates. Bravo. Well, you survived your scarlet fever.
I did.
And just tell us quickly what kind of you're doing now and what motivates you.
Sure. So I have been in D.C. since I started college in 2008 from the George Washington University. I was at the School of Media and Public Affairs doing, I guess, broadcast journalism mostly. And now I am communications, website, social media person for a women's health nonprofit here in the city. I interned there in college, and I have been there pretty much since I graduated, which is almost 5 years.
So you majored in broadcast journalism.
Well, that's not a major per se. It was like, it's called journalism and mass communication, and then based on the classes you took, you kind of like focused yourself on one area, but it's not like anything official.
And why did you want to originally at the George Washington University want to go into that little profession?
I was really interested in news producing, so I started out, I did some news production internships, and that's where I actually got hired first out of college, was with the Gannett Talent Development Program. And I was, I guess, sort of an associate producer at WUSA 9. But
bing.
I was like driving myself miserable. I don't know if you remember this because you were still in school, but I was working the morning show, which is a 2 a.m. to 10 a.m. shift, and I don't have a car. So I was reserving cars to go, like, strategically to drive myself there.
That was a new innovation.
It was a new innovation. Yeah. I fucked up the parking multiple times and got, like, multiple, like, $100 or $200 parking tickets. A bunch of times, like, several times. I was making no money because it was, like, a, like, trial thing, and then they offer you a contract. And then I was having, like, an existential crisis because I was miserable, and like you have to go to sleep at like 6 o'clock at night, which nobody can. Been doing it for years. We're still like, oh yeah, like yeah, we just like use ZQL all the time. Like you don't adjust to it. Like it's just physically impossible, and I hated it, and I was so miserable. So
and this was local news.
This was local news, yeah.
And they were driven to this. Let me ask you this question. Given your experience in broadcasting and journalism broadly, and that you were, I guess, trained in it in a certain way, you're clearly interested in it. Now that you live in the nation's capital, as a New Englander in exile, like many of us, what is your view about the national media, state of national journalism right now?
Well, as far as the election goes, I mute it anytime. I watch CBS in the morning, and they have like a special banner that's like Election 2016. And whenever the banner comes up, I hit mute on the TV, and I do not unmute it until it's gone and they're at whatever the next story is.
So you're tired of the election. The elections.
Yes. Didn't watch the debates. Right. Not a minute of any debate.
But in terms of just overall newscasting, journalism, story development, telling the people reports that they need to know, what's your view of the national journalists and pundits outside of the political spectrum, and the kind of job they're doing, or what in your view is the shape of national media right now?
I think as a social media, I guess, professional, I hate social media. I don't really do it personally. I think it's interesting because things like Twitter are now almost completely saturated by journalists and media people and nobody else. Like the common man is like much lower than like businesses
Because CNN and all those guys are trying to
flood
the news feeds.
Yeah, and every journalist, every like semi-politician, like every organization. I think I work with teenagers a little bit, and I had an event with them recently, and I noticed none of them used Instagram. Like, Instagram is like the new Pinterest in terms of like its businesses, and it's like 20-something girls and moms or whatever. Like, it's much more of a curated lifestyle thing, and it's no longer where teens are. So teens are snapping. So it's going to be interesting to see how this keeps developing, and if each new iteration gets taken over by, I guess it starts with like organizations, and then the media moves to it, and that becomes like their platform.
Because they're trying to market.
Because they're trying to market to the people on it, and then it becomes too saturated with the media, and then some new thing gets invented.
So that's interesting. So you're saying that, I haven't even thought about it this way, so that the fact that these outlets, and especially the mainstream ones, come in and flood it with their content, with their clips, with their headlines, with their snarkiness, and especially during debate or live event time when they're live tweeting or live gramming or whatever it is, and they're just flooding it with their thoughts, so it's no longer a personal branding thing? Or do you think, like, if you were able to block those people, it could still be a useful social platform? Or are those platforms basically dead now? I think Facebook and
I
Twitter.
think they're pretty, like, everyone I know who uses Facebook, it's for a very specific reason, and it's usually like party invites or something like that, or like Facebook Messenger to chat with people, post, updates and friends, like, their lives, all the albums and kind of stuff like that. I don't think businesses are too much on Facebook that I've noticed. Like, definitely stories, like, clickbaity kind of things, but I would say that I think it's Twitter where I feel like I'm seeing like more media than anybody else, because it's not curated the way Facebook is. So it really depends on like who's tweeting the most and at what time. So if your friend tweeted something 20 minutes ago, like, you probably just won't see it.
Right, because it's the algorithm on Twitter. Yeah, because it's not just that CNN's putting stuff up, but every journalist on CNN or Fox or CBS, right? Oh, Lord. So I guess you just have to choose to stop following. But what does that say then? Because, like, if no one's really watching broadcast media or journalism anymore, I mean, maybe in the mornings, like my parents watch it.
I do too, in the morning.
But, like, no one's watching nightly news. And if you're watching commentary, I mean, maybe you are. I mean, Bill O'Reilly I still think is probably getting some numbers. But, like, still, right? I mean, it can't be that great in comparison to the people getting traffic on YouTube and Facebook.
Yeah, YouTube continues to baffle me. I know it's been around forever, and teenagers love it and young people love it. Mm-hmm. And
but you can get money from it if you have enough followers. I mean,
I just watching it, I can't. Like, I don't understand the appeal. Like, I was, again, hanging out with teenagers, and they spent like 2 hours watching bad lip dub videos. And I was like, why does this exist?
Do they not create their own videos? They're just consuming.
They might, but they're much more consuming. Like, I'll fall into a YouTube hole if it's like some sort of like BuzzFeed thing, like the Try Guys or things like that are really interesting. But it's this sort of like common person made unprofessional thing that people love and watch a ton of. And like, I guess I understand it, but it's so far removed from anything that would keep me entertained for more than like a second.
Right. I mean, I think there's a turning point, and again, this is something I heard probably on like a YouTube clip, but it's the difference between when you become a consumer of, I guess, society or popular culture and a producer. And by that I mean it's like you can go to work, you can come home from school or come home, and you're either watching YouTube, watching the news, cooking, reading, and that's all fine. But there's a switch between when you become a consumer of all these platforms and consumer all this information and producing content and projecting creative energy into the world, where it kind of there's that switch, and you can identify people who are producers versus consumers. And social media to me seems like it should be easier for people to put things out there, yet I don't know. I feel like our generation and almost every generation is just as lazy to just keep consuming. It's like DVDs or anything else. I mean, what? I mean, do you observe that, or do you see it differently?
I think I probably see it differently. Like, I think what social media has changed, and you can read about this kind of anywhere, is that everybody's a producer. So how do you kind of like let the cream rise to the top when everybody's producing, everyone's more focused on getting their own likes and their own views and marketing themselves than being a true consumer? Like, so many people are like, oh, like my video and I'll like yours, or like follow my page for follow backs and all that kind of stuff. So I think partly that's why I don't feel like I use it very much personally, is because I don't know, it just, this is a New England sensibility thing we talk about. It's in like extremely poor taste to like solicit attention.
Yeah, it is. So, to be egocentric, yes.
And that's
it's
why
frowned upon.
I think I and my boyfriend, who's also New England, and a lot of us like maybe have social media, but we have like, I have like 40, 60 followers of like people I'm like actually friends with in real life. But to say like, oh my God, follow, like do, like give me attention just is icky.
Yeah, or like, why are you, unless you're putting things out there, like
art, yeah,
right.
Like
so
real.
if like you're a musician, right, or you're putting out something like this podcast,
which we won't market on.
Which well,
refuse to market.
It'll be heavily marketed, but not by me, by a couple dwarves in the basement who are prowling on social media. No, I mean, it is true, and I'm trying to think of people who are social media abusers, because at the end of the day, if the national media markets are not even just dishonest, but just uninteresting, it doesn't even matter what their content is. Like, who cares? Because I can get that information even quicker than waiting for a broadcast network to tell me what's going on. So I don't really need the modern or the mainstream journalists anymore. But if social media is no longer a utility, like, what are we supposed to do next? Because if businesses and individuals are going to go on these platforms that people are just going to leave because they're like, why?
It's all ads.
Yeah, it's all ads. I'm competing with people selling their shit and self-promoting, and then you see people on Facebook writing their 5-paragraph diatribes, and some people get 0 likes, and then some people get like 200 and 1,000 comments. And you're like, well, that doesn't make a ton of sense, So, like, what's next? What's the next step in how we're supposed to communicate or self-promote or try to get ahead with our message?
I've been thinking about this a lot, and I've said this to a couple people. I listen to WNYC every single day. I'm sorry, I don't donate. I know I should, because I listen to it for 8 hours a day every day.
You're frugal.
For 4 years. I do donate to Planned Parenthood, which Jordan would probably.
We'll get into that next.
Anyway, so they had this guy on the radio. And he's actually the guy from Black Mirror, a show I have never watched, but I've heard is really good.
I've heard good things, too.
I've heard good things about it. I don't watch anything but The Office reruns because I like to stay away from new media. No, but he was talking, and something really struck me. He was talking about how when we are out and about in life and we have interactions with all these different people, our coworkers, our friends, our family, like when you have a big party, and I thought you could understand this. When you have a big party and you have all these people, your wedding maybe, your coworkers are there, and your parents are there, and your college friends are there, and your high school friends are there. It's hard, like, you go between these groups and you speak to them differently and you act a little bit differently and you do all these things. And so when you are in a place where all these people are in the same room, he was saying, like, I realized, like, I don't know who I am, because who I am is so defined by a little bit of this, like, natural code switching we do between, like, oh, some, like, gross joke, like, we're not going to say to our parents or, like, our coworkers, or, we have maybe something a little bit more professional with our coworkers, or just, like, those kind of natural cadences in life. Mm-hmm. And he was saying, but online, you have one persona. Like, you can't switch between them. It doesn't have that nuance and that code switching, so if you're on Facebook, like, that's kind of, you have to curate who you are and come up with that, usually when you're alone and you're deciding, like, who you are, and you're portraying that same person and that same personality to everyone who follows you, whether that's your coworkers, the general public, your family.
So those cadences,
and
it's tough to control.
And that's what he was saying is why he thinks that social media in particular is so polarized. Like, because if you come out and say, like, oh, I donate to Planned Parenthood, Like, maybe if you have conservative family members, you wouldn't bring that up at the Thanksgiving table. So these sort of things and opinions are now becoming base who we are, as opposed to like one piece of us that we choose not to share or not. So
you're saying we can't really tailor ourselves anymore if we're posting at all, because I feel like the one of two tracks is I'm withholding more information now, which now, I mean, it's not suppression because you're going to say all these things in various conversations, but like social media is a very useful tool for getting things out there quickly. And if you have something you want to say or something you're proud of, or you're trying to just promote even your self brand, I mean, you have an incentive to want to do that. At the same time, you don't want to put everything, I mean, you could, but I think it'd be highly contradictory in the first place, and you'd be almost schizophrenic. But at the same time, you're going to get a lot of different opinions, probably more negative than you'd expect from people that you thought were your friends.
Yeah.
And I mean, and who knows? I mean, maybe at the end of the day, I don't agree with this, but playing devil's advocate here, maybe that's a good thing, because if people don't like you for the whole person, they weren't your friends to begin with, as cheesy as that is. But you're not, social media doesn't really let you play those personal games. So what are you left with? Just promoting some brand that you want to put into the world? And isn't that just artificial?
Like, I hardly ever share anything on Facebook because, I don't know, like, what's the point? Like, for example, this big story was the Brock Turner thing. And there was the victim that she wrote this long thing that was on BuzzFeed. And I actually shared it. And that might be, like, one of the only times I've posted something like that, because maybe it's a conversation I'd have at home or with our friends. They'd say, like, oh my God, have you heard about this case? Like, obviously you haven't, talk about it. But to necessarily, like, go out and take a stand, I think that's probably one of the rare examples of something that I, like, felt strongly enough to take a stand. But, I mean, I read a million different New York Times articles, Atlantic, and all these things of opposing views or stupid things, and I share absolutely none of them because, like, what do I get out of that? I'd rather sit down and talk to you and say, like, oh, I read this article, blah, 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 than, like, post on my Facebook like, everybody read this article. Like, I don't get anything out of that.
So what's really interesting there is those pieces that you share about yourself, or that any of us share about ourselves, the ones that we are comfortable enough and have the courage but the boldness to know that we are right, to put those things out there, as rare as they are, as like, these are the things really I stand behind. Yeah. And at that point, so in a way, it is revealing who you really are, but in the strongest sense. It's like, it's not worth my time to create conflict for things that, you know, might be interesting or might be important to me, but like at the end of the day, I don't need that kind of harassment. Or, you know, you're writing something, you're like, I'm not going to write this. I just like, this was fun as a Post-it note, but I don't need this right now. So, like, the things that you do put out, though, I agree. I think they are becoming rarer, but, like, it also, and they're good, but then you have issues like when the school shooting in Newtown, Connecticut happens, or the shooting in France. And
both of those I learned about on Facebook first.
Right. Which is great because the transference of information, transaction costs incredibly low. At the same time, everybody's putting out mini eulogies, right? Or like mini things. And I did it only once, really, for the Newtown.
I have never done it.
Yeah, and it's just because it's a town near me in Connecticut, and like the images were so rampant, and I thought I could. You know, because there wasn't any disagreement about what happened. There wasn't any political bullshit. It was just like you feel so strongly, and so you put things out there. But there comes a point where there's so much tragedy going around, and it's viral tragedy, and then everyone needs to change their profile pic, or they need to put, you know, out some words. And
pray for Paris.
Right.
Like, what does that
even
mean
anymore? And
at what
point, right? Like, and at what point does it become like obligatory or even phony, or like I'm joining the bandwagon? Like, if you're, because what we said before, if you're putting things out in those rare moments where it matters and this is genuinely who you are, then what about all the people who kind of jump on that bandwagon? I'm sure they're being sincere in some place, but it doesn't.
I feel too uncomfortable, like, maybe that's dumb, or maybe that's the New England thing again. But like, I'm just like, ew, like obviously I feel this way, and maybe I'll discuss it with my friends or my family about how something has affected me or what I think about it. But to like just share like pray for Paris or whatever on my Facebook status feels very ingenuine.
Yeah.
So that's, but if somebody does feel genuine about it or they like that, then that's again who you're putting out there as your personality as much as anything else, that you want to share those wishes, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, but yeah, I think sometimes maybe it becomes obligatory or uncomfortable.
Is it sorry to depart from the seriousness, but is it the same thing as like, you know, the chronic happy birthday people? Like, I feel bad, but
I say happy birthday to no one, and I always feel terrible. Sometimes I'll text if I like see that it's like somebody.
Right.
No, but one of my really good friends, Daniel, just had a birthday. I didn't say anything. Happy birthday, Daniel.
Happy birthday. We love you, Daniel. Party line. No, but I feel bad because the minute you do it for a couple of people, and this is the thing, because everyone can see that you put out the birthday thing. It's like putting out something on Facebook or Twitter, and everybody knows this is what you think, or this is part of your identity. Oh, well, I didn't know Kate had so many dimensions. But you say happy birthday to one or two people, and the next day, like, your best friend from kindergarten has their birthday, and you're like, well, you know, I'm sure they know I mean it. And it doesn't take any time, but there's like...
I hope they come up with a button so you just hit yes, and it just puts on their wall happy birthday. Or you could customize it so it's like always like happy birthday, like gorgeous, like, or whatever you want to put.
Yeah, like an adjective bank.
Yeah.
Or just an emoji.
Yeah.
You know, just if we could GIF around the birthday thing, Facebook, everybody, get on that. Because I'm on that train. I just don't...
No.
But you feel terrible because the minute you don't do it consistently for like 2 months, like every New Year, right? You're like, you know what? I'm going to be in more touch with my friends. Announce everybody New Year's. Oh, God. It's just me. It's that guilt. It's that terrible Puritan guilt.
I took out my ear stud for my New Year's resolution, which really wasn't a resolution because it was like, all right, it's midnight. Somebody take it out. and then it was complete. So I did it.
You know what? I can sympathize. I don't know what that experience is like, but I'm sure it's
a very easy resolution.
Yeah.
1 year I'll take out my nose ring. That's like, I don't know, at what age can you not have a nose ring? Is it just like, meh?
I mean, I guess people have piercings in a lot of
like,
places.
if you're gonna get married, like, is that more like a marker?
I think it is.
I think
if you have a nose ring when you're married, I don't know. It's just, as you say, it's simply not done.
It's simply not done. Yeah.
I can't rationalize it. Yeah, but probably. You have experience with, you said teen pregnancy and childhood pregnancy also.
Childhood pregnancy.
Pregnancy
teen,
that bears children.
Although it is one of my favorite facts that pregnancy 14 and under is almost eradicated in New England and these states, and still quite a problem in Alabama and Georgia and some southern states.
And why do you think that is?
I don't know. Like, some of it might be, I don't know what the rates are of, say, child abuse and things like that. So it's really hard to tell. I think New England does have better sex education for younger ages. And there's also some problems of, like, a person born to a teen mother or young mother is more likely to become a young mother themselves. So if we stopped that in Massachusetts 20 years ago, then it would be that sort of trickle-down effect as well.
And given your... Because you interact with teens.
A little bit. Not pregnant teens at all, right. But sort of teens that we use as a focus group about the communication efforts we do.
Now, what do you think their response, or how can I put this lightly, their impression would be when a major presidential candidate gets caught saying, I moved on her like a bitch.
Who said that?
Trump.
Really?
Yeah, in that 2005 video.
I don't watch any.
They let you kiss him because you're a star, and they let you do it. You just grab him by the pussy.
Right.
You've heard that's just the classic.
I've heard of the line. Yeah.
So, again, he says it's locker room talk. I think it's more back kitchen talk. I don't have much experience like with locker room talk just outside of gym class, but I can tell you, having worked in an Italian restaurant for 3 years, they've said far worse.
Yeah.
to male employees. So, but that's neither here nor there. So, given this environment we're in where sex education in a lot of ways has never been higher, but there's all of these conflicts with between the genders, between men and women, and roles in society, and sex in society, and attitudes are still changing. What's your view on what these comments do, if anything?
I don't know about the comments so much, because at least with the teens I interact with, Trump is sort of a punchline the way he is with most sort of
all of his things
and everyone at this point, which is just so weird. Yeah. That I mean, not to go off on like a Trump tangent, but it's so interesting because I would assume that part of this was because, he wanted to garner favor with various people or be thought of in high regards. And I would say previous to this, he was held in much higher regards. So, like, now he's the punchline of almost any sort of, like, liberal elite, whether that's the media, Hollywood, and all these kind of things, which is so strange because you would assume that he would want to be liked by those people, or at least was garnering their favor at some point with, TV and stuff like that.
With The Apprentice.
So that's such a strange switch, I guess.
Well, how did he... I mean, not to go on this too much, because there are other things that I want to talk about, but how could he be so... I guess even if his beliefs are different, rhetorically antithetical to these progressive celebrities. Like, he knows these people when he was doing The Apprentice, Celebrity Apprentice. He knows their attitudes. Like, does he just not care? I mean, part of the reason a lot of people like him is because he doesn't really care and just kind of says, fuck you.
Yeah.
And that's kind of liberating against the PC culture. But he must have known.
I don't know. I think, again, I don't pay a ton of attention of, like, various things, but wasn't there that, like, they were both giving speeches at some religion thing semi-recently, and, like, his got booed or something like that?
Oh, the Al Smith dinner. Yeah.
And I guess it's just sort of things like that where, I don't know if it matters who you are. Like, I don't know how you, like, brush that off and be like, fuck them.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know. I haven't given it a lot of thought, I guess. But to get back to your question about teens and sex and attitudes, sorry.
Yes.
One thing that I am always shocked about when we talk about, like, oh, what do you talk about in sex ed? You have sex education in schools. And even schools that don't really have, like, sex education or anything major, consent is so much bigger. Like, I don't think we ever talked about consent in, like, sex ed or any sort of school. Like, I think that is such a bigger conversation than it used to be. And even some more of the, like, rape culture or dress codey things like that you see in the news all the time that, like, oh, her collarbone was showing and the principal sent her home or whatever. Those kind of stories. And they've probably been happening for years, but with social media and things like that, you hear about them a lot more. So yeah, I'd say talking about consent is, I mean, I don't want to say like the new thing on the block, but I think that's an important conversation that really wasn't being had.
It's behavioral, not just the physical. You're not just learning, here's what happens when A and B occur. It's there's actually a lot of rhythms to this dance, kids, boys and girls, and like realize the social cues, the social signals, what's unwanted attention. You got these hormones going, but like you can't.
Yeah.
No means no.
Yeah, because we talk a lot about, when you're doing social media campaigns or whatever else, are you looking for a behavior change or an attitude change or like a value change and all those kind of things, because they're all very different. Like you can say like, oh, I want him to start buying Coca-Cola instead of Pepsi. Like that's a behavior change. But to say like, I want him to start thinking that like Coca-Cola is horrible for him and Pepsi is going to be like the whatever, the best new thing. Like that's an attitude shift and not just sort of like a casual behavior change. So I think that we're not necessarily trying to say like, oh, here's your behavior, like you should use a condom, but like your attitude of like, you should want to use a condom because you respect the mutual health and safety of the concept. So that's sort of where that's gone, I think.
Where do you, it's always interesting in hindsight because it was funny. I was in Connecticut over the weekend and I was walking back from a bar with my parents because my brother had just played a gig there and we went there to support him, and it was actually a lot of fun. And I ran into my old high school friends because apparently they lived in West Hartford, and they were just there on the street, and I was like, wow. I was thinking back to like as people like that do, your earlier years, like middle school and high school, and when all those things are going on, and you're really like entering a phase of adulthood separate from being a child and adolescent, which is like that sexual moment. And in New England, I don't know. I think it probably has one of the better sex ed curriculum, at least in some of the public schools, but maybe not all. I mean,
yeah, it varies.
It probably varies from town to town, but on average, it's probably better than other areas of the country. There's probably more access to things, contraceptives and all that stuff. But you never really, I mean, even guys, we didn't really talk about it with our parents, and I guess you don't. I think that's normal. But I also wonder if maybe that's unhealthy. Maybe the Puritan or the conservative view of talking about sex. We all know what's going on, but when we're not discussing it, even amongst our friends and ourselves, out of some sort of, I don't know, it's an unclean thing, even though it's not, we all freaking enjoy it, but like it's not, it doesn't come up in conversation. And maybe people from other parts of the country jump in to talk about a lot, but
it's really hard to say whether it's a regional thing or like a family by family basis. Like we didn't either, and even among like my high school friends, like not really. In fact, one of them just said yesterday, like, you're the only one I realized from our high school group that like I've ever talked to about sex. And I'll probably be one of those parents that's like, well, we're gonna talk about sex, condoms, penis, vagina, you're 3, because that's my background. Obviously, I feel very passionate about it. I feel pretty educated about it. And again, that's more of like a who I am as a person and less of a regional thing because, like you said, teen pregnancy is pretty low in New England. Education's pretty good. And part of that reason is definitely going to be parents and conversation. We know that from, all kinds of research and surveys and things like that teens, especially when they're younger, say that their attitudes about sex are shaped more by their parents than anything else. So I think it's not necessarily like sitting down and talking the birds and the bees, but how you're raised or how you feel comfortable or open with the discussions about, sex and relationships and love, just as sort of like a general topic and maybe not the specific mechanics.
Mm-hmm. Right. Because there's a whole culture of sex that's just everywhere right now. Like
if your parents are like, oh, dating, like talk about, dating like it's a normal thing, or like anything like that, or your health and doctor stuff, like I think that you then are just like, oh, like I feel like I could probably figure it out. Or like at least you're not being raised in a place where you feel like if you had sex and your parents found out, they would like throw you out of the house or like.
Right.
So I think that that's probably the attitudinal thing is maybe we didn't talk about it, but like we knew we were in a place of safety.
Right. But at the same time, you all watch like HBO or things like anytime sex is present, or like, we have donors that are in the porn industry and like, oh, porn, like everyone's ears shut up, right? It's like, oh, even if you're disgusted by it, you're like, oh, so like there's a part of us, even if we don't discuss it, that's very alert to sex in our culture. And kind of bringing it a little bit back to the media angle, because this is a story that came up, and I think it's important. It's in the news. And last night on, I know you don't watch it, but Megyn Kelly on Fox.
I watched the clip because we talked about this, yeah.
So Newt Gingrich is on there, who's one of Trump's surrogates. And
we met him in an airport once. My dad shook his hand. That's a segue.
Is he a proud Newt guy, or?
I mean, he was, but it was also like 97 maybe.
Oh. So, before the fall.
Yeah.
Oh, nice. Poor
anyway,
guy. He's
sorry.
been through a lot.
Yeah.
No, but he's, she invites him on, and it seems like it's going to be a fine interview. And this goes back to the media being weird and almost obsolete. But she's then asking him about Trump being a sexual predator, and she uses those words, right? And Newt freaks out. Because he's like, you can't say the words Trump is a sexual predator or accused of being a sexual predator when there's no, like, you're inferring
she said
that.
If he's a sexual predator.
But to Newt's point, he was like, that's irresponsible journalism. And he said, that is you making an inference. And she's, well, I didn't make a conclusion about it. And he said, well, you did by using those words, which he is correct on. But the one thing But I think he heard himself, and I want your feedback on all this, but because there's so many layers to this. Because then he says, well, you journalists and your bias and you're focusing on all this stuff, and the main channels devoted 27 minutes of prime time to this and only 57 seconds to Hillary's speeches. And he was like, you can't stop talking about sex and you're not talking about public policy.
Huh.
And it was like, it's kind of true, but at the same time...
Well, no, what he said was, you're obsessed... He said, like, I'm sorry you're obsessed with sex. And she said something like, I'm not obsessed with sex. I'm interested in the idea that the person in charge is a person who thinks he can do X, Y, and Z to women and treat women and talk to women like that. And that concerns me, and that concerns all of the women of America.
Right.
Was her response.
Is that what she said? Is that she articulated it that well?
She articulated it far better than I just did. Far better. But that was her point, because I read this. Spoiler, though, I did read and watch this on Jezebel.
Oh, no, not Jezebel.
Yes. And then the top commenter.
Hate men over there.
I hate men right now, too. No. And the top comment was like, did Newt Gingrich just accuse Fox of a liberal bias?
Yeah.
And like, is it a liberal bias or is it an anti-Trump bias? Because I think that's a distinction now. Do you think she's
still wounded from...
No, I don't think so. I think she's just like priming the pump to have a new show or her own show or move channels because her contract is up. I read.
Yeah, I think you're right too, because she wouldn't be picking fights with Sean Hannity and all these other. I mean,
our other Fox people also are right?
They are, but they're not doing it in her way, because like. So, and I don't think Brett Baer, maybe he's interviewed Trump outside of his show. Well,
I mean, to get back to a point, like, if we're like, oh, yeah, Trump, like, he just says, fuck you and does what he wants, like, if that seems to be maybe the argument you're making about Megyn Kelly.
No, I wasn't making any
Not an argument, but that seems to be like, saying like, well... Why can't the media say, fuck it, we're going to talk about what we want to talk about, too?
Oh, no. So,
I wonder that.
Yeah, no. So this was kind of the conversation I wanted to have, because we talked about, people's ears perk up, Game of Thrones, boobs, tits, veg. Like, I wonder, the media, journalists broadly, and if you watch movies like Nightcrawler, you see the incentives that...
Nope, didn't see it.
With Jake Gyllenhaal.
No.
I recommend it to a friend. It's on Netflix. It's delightful. It's a little dark, but it's delightful. But it shows it from local news where you used to work to the national media loves drama. They need ratings, right?
Yeah.
I mean, a broadcast journalist's job is to get ratings.
Yeah.
And that's fine. I completely understand that world, which means you're trying to get things that make people watch, not change the channel.
Yeah.
Or, I mean, if they put you on mute, I guess it's the best of both worlds because you're still getting the ratings.
Yeah.
But, you want something where they're actually going to engage and come back the next day. So, it used to be crime, right?
Yeah.
But the fact that sex or sexual discourse in any form is so prevalent in this presidential campaign, let alone politics in general right now, is kind of crazy. But like that, that's probably why Megyn Kelly and others are bringing this up. I'm not discounting the fact that they think it's an important issue, but let's also not disguise the fact that they and their producers probably have an incentive to use this night after night.
I would be curious, though, like, compare times of how many minutes Fox sent. He said, you spent 23 minutes talking about Donald Trump's thing. Right. I want someone to then make a chart and tell me how much time they spent talking about, like, Benghazi. Because that was the thing before, like, the big, a big tentpole kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And the problem right now is that people are not widely not latching on to this, like, email thing. Because even if there's a new leak, even if there's new stuff, for most of us, including me, who's fairly well informed and pays attention, you're like, oh, like another email thing. Like, right. I'm not, unless something like really earth shattering is thing, people are gonna be like email scandal, and you bunch that all up into like one scandal. Whereas every time Trump has something, it's maybe a little different or a little bit noteworthy enough. But if it's something like an email, this email, that email, then you're not gonna like perk up the same way because there's not these sort of like outrageous enough to get that
unless
interest.
The email had something about sex in it, right?
Yeah, or something like something that you could really like wrap your head around, but some of this like nuanced like was it classified at the time? Like, blah, blah, blah. Like,
Right.
people don't care.
I mean, yeah. I mean, the thing is, like, it's very difficult straddling the two worlds because in a lot of ways, like, for my day job, I just see all this stuff coming across the desk all the time. And I'm like, oh, shit. Oh, God. Cheryl Mills, Huma Abedin. Like, they're so corrupt. Why can't anybody see? But then I step back and I'm like, the reason nobody sees is because... What?
Is that Clooney's wife?
Huma Abedin?
Yeah.
No. She
What's her name?
was
Huma.
Huma. She was Anthony Weiner's wife.
Oh,
Remember?
that poor woman.
Carlos Stranger.
Poor
Yeah, I
woman.
know. Poor lady. Poor thing.
Oh my God, that guy took a dick pic with his baby.
And then did it
like,
again.
Next to him.
Yes. Carlos Danger.
He makes me believe in sex addiction because nobody is that stupid.
Yeah, he's clearly from New York or New Jersey. Sorry. I love you all, but it's true. That's too funny. What were we talking about?
I don't know. Oh, news.
Oh,
News going across your desk.
Yeah, so straddling the other side of the fence is like, you know, if another email thing comes out or Trump says another outrageous thing, like after some point there's so much saturation of terribleness that you're like, oh, it's one more thing.
Yeah.
To, you know, what is that point of punctuation where it actually affects you? And I think you're right. I think at this point the antipathy towards the entire race for both people is so bad.
Well, yeah,
something they're not going to care.
I mean, something major has to happen. One of them has to have a major scandal in order to change any of their voting base right now. Like, some Trump person isn't going to change their mind all of a sudden in the next 15 crazy tweets or sound bites unless it's something like crazy egregious. And same thing with Hillary. Nobody is not going to vote for her unless something huge, like if some Bernie person like decides like, all right, I'm voting for Hillary, something like big would have to happen to like change their mind. So I think that's.
Do you think
so what's
people
the point of all
are
these
going to
little
come
dicks?
out and vote though? I'm thinking in her case specifically, if it appears that she's going to win, do people just say?
I don't know. That would be a concern if I were
right, like
a
what
person like that. Yeah.
What is the engagement level of her supporters who maybe were nervous when she was 9 points up after the convention and then she just did fundraisers and then fell on 9/11 and it became an even race before the debates. Now it looks like it's big, but I again, because this is really interesting because you just said that, you know, there's all the saturation and then it has to be something big, and it seems to me like the race only changes when something outside of these two happens, like when Hillary brought out the cons, right, with the Gold Star family thing. I mean, Trump botched that, but like that was something that was like pretty big, really reset the race. Same thing with the 9/11 thing, like that really came out of her control.
I don't know. I feel like your world probably saw that a lot more, like just sort of the general. Like,
you don't think people thought, oh,
No.
she might be ill?
No, I think that was like, I know you really latched onto that. I know, like, I remember, I think you put it on Facebook, and that's why I saw it. But like, generally, no.
She has Parkinson's. Listen to me.
I think.
Yeah.
Well, it worked for President Bartlett, so.
Right? No,
MS.
MS
No.
is not as they. What did they try to stress to everybody?
I didn't finish the West Wing.
No, shame.
Oh my God, there were two guys dressed like that at the high heel race yesterday.
Oh, no
as
kidding.
the Shame Nuns.
Oh, down in DuPont Circle.
Yeah, and then there was like a nude one.
We love the high heel race.
Yeah, sorry. But yeah, I don't think that Hillary stumbling thing was as big for almost anyone, or at least like didn't shake like her core or her like liberal base. I don't think that was really on the radar.
The 8-point lead she had in August go down to an even race nationally? What was the thing?
I don't know. I don't study those things. I can just say like, I feel like I didn't hear about it from anybody.
So you're and those two things, quite frankly, are still very personality related.
Yeah.
I wonder this Obamacare thing that just came out.
What just came out?
So the rate hikes.
Oh yeah.
So
because they only have old sick people.
Right, and all the like 87 insurers are pulling out, so there's only going to be like one insurer in every state, and like all these Democrats, like Debbie Wasserman Schultz, Nancy Pelosi, they've all come out and said, yeah, there's problems with the pricing. We're going to have to work with the Democrats to tweak the law, which is the first time they've ever admitted that the law has a problem.
Yeah. And
Obama's pretty been silent about it. Joe Biden's acknowledged there's going to be fixes needed to the law. And I wonder, I mean, because part of Clinton's candidacy is she's saying, well, things were bad, they're getting good. Now I'm going to take what Obama's done and make it great. Can she really claim that while Obamacare is kind of falling apart? Because that's his signature thing. Like that's if he doesn't have Obamacare, he doesn't have much, right?
I don't know enough about politics to comment about that. But I mean, the health care, I really don't know anything.
Do you think it'll be do you think it'll matter? I mean, will it matter to our generation? Will it matter to other voters? I mean, even if you're not personally engaged with the topic.
Yeah, it's hard because, there's certain things that I think I really like, and I don't know. Certainly there should be a way for people to get health care at a reasonable cost that's not Medicare or whatever, and if they don't have their employer. And I think some of these things, like extending it until you're 26 under your parents, no pre-existing conditions, birth control, like some of this kind of stuff I think is great. And I don't really know enough about it to speak on it, but I can say that, like, I know that I feel that those specific mandates or whatever they are technically should be upheld.
Right.
But yeah, it's hard to tell. And I think it's hard for us as young people who've always had good jobs and stable homes and stuff to know what it's like for somebody maybe who is on the exchange, or somebody who's 21 and is healthy and is poor, or, just doesn't have a full-time job, doesn't have a job that has health care, to like say like, all right, well, I'm going to pay the, whatever it is, $120 a month so I have health care. Like, that's a big, that's a reason, it's hard enough getting people to say, do retirement.
They'll be lucky if they get that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how much it costs, clearly.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, young people don't buy health insurance either, so it's hard to incentivize people. And, young people maybe don't even know how to do their taxes, so saying like, well, you're going to get in trouble, like, whatever.
Right,
that's a vague future trouble thing.
With the healthcare penalty.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I'm just thinking a little more broadly, regardless of the ins and outs of the weeds of the law, because I'm not going to pretend like I'm an expert on healthcare either. I'm not. But it just seems like for a campaign that's predicated on building on your successors or your predecessors' success, and that law's kind of falling apart, it could be a punctuation moment. I still think it looks bad for him, but I was just curious if you thought this was one of those those moments.
Just don't know enough.
Don't know enough. Well, Obamacare, Megyn Kelly, Newt Gingrich. I'm just 2 weeks. This hellhole is almost over. And what are people gonna do without the election to fall on? I don't know. I don't know themselves. Well, it is Halloween season.
It is.
Is there any fun things that you do? Any tradition?
As kids, it's like you always have to like have a costume, but you'd also like have to wear a sweatshirt underneath it or something. So it's nice that it's usually like, I don't know, at least 60, if not 70 or more.
Halloween
degrees.
Is better down south where
it is.
It's not 40 degrees.
Yeah,
outside.
You don't have to base your costume on like your ability to stay warm.
The weather.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, the weather is the deciding factor up there. It dictates your life. What are some differences between, because Halloween has such a nostalgic effect, at least on me. I mean, if your mom or your parents buy you a costume or make you a costume, my mother made us all costumes each year, which I thought was intense. But it was awesome.
My mom made our costumes when we were like little.
Yeah.
And then I think when we got old enough, we wanted to be like specific thing. Also, we danced, so we had so many, like we never bought Halloween costumes because we have so many.
You dance competitions.
Yeah. So we have so many like really nice custom made pieces that we would kind of throw together stuff.
That's cool that you already had that as a base though. Yeah, I mean, but it's, you're going around with either pillowcases or big bags, and it's about the candy, it's about the costumes, it's about seeing your friends, and it's like there's that moment when you're in your teenage years and it changes. Now that we're adults.
How old were you? What was your last trick-or-treating? Did you go really too long?
Well, so it's like one of those things, like, when do you not learn about Santa? Which was earlier. But I feel like Halloween went... Probably trick-or-treated through, like, 4th or 5th grade.
Oh, God. I was going to say, like, I definitely went in 8th grade.
Yeah. Well, that's probably true. But it changed because I think your parents take you out first. I didn't plan it.
I remember, like, it was, like, my friend, and we, like, just put a bunch of, like, random shit on, and we're, like, mismatched, and, like, went.
That's fun.
And the year before that, I, again, didn't think about it, and we went in like our pajamas and robes, and we're like, bedtime costume. I don't know.
And thus began the great napping. And the loving of sleep. But there is a transition, because I think you see Halloween, because like when you stop believing in Santa Claus, like that is a switch in the Christmas holiday.
You didn't believe in Santa Claus when you were 5th grade, right?
No,
you
no,
weren't talking about something else.
No, it was like 3rd grade, I think. But I feel like Halloween's one of those holidays you see your parents and people in movies celebrating it. And so you actually really do trick or treat or do like the adolescent side of Halloween, probably through middle school.
Yeah.
But there's a transition in about like 7th, 8th, and 9th grade.
Mm-hmm.
And when you go to high school. And the Halloween dances start up, right? And you're
tipping your toe into like sexy or like trying to like be somewhat provocative.
Right? All of a sudden the sexy Halloween costumes come out, right? And I mean, I guess girls kind of change the dynamic of the holiday. That's really when you know the season has changed.
Rape culture.
Is that rape culture? Well, right? I mean, am I wrong? There's that kind of transition period.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember like high school. We had like a homecoming Halloween dance, and me and my friends. It was in the yearbook. We all made costumes. We were all different like Disney princesses,
right?
And like made it. And they weren't slutty at all, because that was not us. But they were definitely like that was. I remember that was senior year. Right. Before that, like I feel like it kind of like fell by the wayside for a few years, and then college is when it like ramped back up. But like it's a big deal, and then middle school, it's like you're trying, and it's like kind of dumb, and then you give up on it, and then it's like you're older, high school, and you want to do it again, and then college is like a big deal.
So in a way, Halloween really renews itself, because that's really, because I'm visualizing it now. Yeah. It's like, oh, we're trick or treating and we're in our paper mache costumes and all this fun stuff, and then you're like, I'm too old for trick or treating. Like I want to be in a cool costume, and then you're like, girls, and then dances happen, and then you're like, oh, so instead of trick or treating, I'll trick or treat, right? Ew. But, right, and then, high school happens, and then it becomes even more an extension of that. Mm-hmm. And then, I think it's less about costumes, right?
In college?
In high school.
Oh, yeah.
But then college happens, and you go all out, it's full weekends, and then when you're an adult, it's like a whole season. Like, we were talking about the high heel race down in DuPont. Yeah. I mean, we're now doing Halloween a week, 2 weeks in advance. Everyone's got cocktail specials and
but it's not so much about the costumes or the night or anything like that at all.
No, but
just that season.
I guess it's the
It's
Halloween
the pumpkin
season.
Spice season. Yes. Like the whole. I love the holiday. I'm so happy, but yeah.
And until you have to take that basic picture holding the pumpkin.
Yes.
Which what really grinds my gears. Okay, because pumpkin picking is great, and these people go on Instagram, taking pictures of themselves holding their pumpkin, saying, isn't this basic? I'm like, nope, that is a fine New England tradition. Apple picking, getting your pumpkin, carving your goddamn pumpkin.
Oh my God. I didn't realize it was so hard until I genuinely tried to carve a pumpkin 2 years ago. I was like, what? How did we do this? This is extremely difficult. And you jam the knife into the pumpkin and then you can't get the tip out.
You give a lot of credit to your father in that moment.
Yeah, your dad's really...
you were a strong man.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think the cool thing about this time of year, not only does it lead into Thanksgiving and all the wonderful things of fall and winter, but Halloween really does reinvent itself at every stage of your life.
Yeah. And then when you have kids, cool it's probably another, you get to then experience it as a parent.
Yeah. So, it's one of my favorite holidays. I don't know about you, but... You're welcome, America. It started in New England. So, Sleepy Hollow.
Oh, yeah, Hocus Pocus. People love that damn movie.
Guess where it took place. Salem, Mass.
Fine, but you don't need to watch it every day.
No, not every day. Once a season. I think once in October. It's you have your Hocus Pocus night. Savor it.
Yeah, I'm a Muppet Christmas Carol girl. So, I care a lot more about that. Not that I watch you can't watch it till December, but...
Right, yeah.
I care about that. I don't really care about Hocus Pocus.
Yeah, you shouldn't be watching...
No.
Christmas until
after Thanksgiving.
At least a day after Thanksgiving. I would say December 1st is your absolute earliest, but there's some heathens out there disobeying the rules. Anyways, this has been a delightful
Delightful.
podcast. Thank you for joining me, Kate, and we look forward to hosting you in the future. This has been a rousing success. And for all of you out there, as always, New England prevails.